Wherever you are right now, I hope you are comfortable, perhaps lying down, perhaps sitting in a quiet corner, or maybe simply letting the soft rhythm of your breath settle into something gentle and familiar. Tonight, we will drift together into a place where science becomes story, where nature becomes acquiescent architect, and where even the smallest, stillest thing, a single leaf resting in its own silence, can reveal a universe of mathematical secrets. So let your shoulders soften. Let the world outside become dimmer, softer, slower, because this journey is meant to unfold gradually, like morning light stretching into the corners of a quiet room. And in that calm unfolding, we will explore something deceptively simple, the mathematics hidden in the silence of a leaf. A leaf seems so ordinary, so familiar, that its very presence becomes invisible to us. Yet it is one of the most elegant structures nature has ever crafted. When it hangs still on a branch, almost unmoving, its silence feels complete. But beneath that silence lives a symphony of geometry, physics, chemistry, and biological logic, each shaped by millions of years of evolution, each guided by rules that echo the fundamentals of mathematics itself. Imagine for a moment a leaf fluttering in the softest breeze. That motion is not random. It follows patterns, subtle, delicate oscillations governed by its thickness, its shape, and the distribution of tiny veins within its body. Even when the leaf appears perfectly still, that stillness is a resting point of balance, a culmination of forces that cancel one another out in just the right proportion. In silence, it is obeying mathematics. Let us begin gently by listening metaphorically to that silence. The silence of a leaf is not the absence of sound, but the presence of equilibrium. It is the point where the weight of the leaf, the tension of the stem, and the pull of gravity converge into a single, quiet state. This is what mathematicians call a steady-state solution, a moment where nothing needs to change because everything has found its place within a delicate equation. The leaf in its stillness is solving that equation continuously, every microsecond, adjusting itself with microscopic flexes, imperceptible shifts, and symmetrical balances. Even its shape, the graceful curves along its edges, holds the echoes of mathematical optimization. Many leaves follow forms that resemble solutions to the diffusion equation because their primary purpose, capturing sunlight, requires maximizing surface area while minimizing material cost. Evolution, in this sense, behaves like a patient mathematician, sculpting geometry through trial and error across generations, refining the leaf into an elegant compromise of form and function. If you imagine yourself drifting back through time, perhaps thousands or even millions of years, you would find ancestors of modern leaves experimenting with countless shapes, some too thick, some too narrow, some unable to withstand wind, others unable to collect enough light. Over time, nature nudged these shapes toward optimization, toward efficiency, and mathematics was the guide. But this story of a leaf's silence is not only about shape. It is also about patterns, patterns written in veins, branching outward like little rivers, forming hierarchies reminiscent of fractals. The smallest veins echo the arrangement of the largest ones. This repetition is not aesthetic alone. It is the best way to transport water, nutrients, and sugars across the entire surface. It is a living model of Murray's law, a mathematical principle that describes how branching networks, whether in leaves, lungs, or blood vessels, tend to divide in optimal ways to reduce energy use. As you lie there, listening to the slow unfolding of this story, picture the leaf as a soft green tapestry woven with invisible mathematics. At its edges, tiny serrations or gentle curves record the history of its growth. Each ridge is shaped by the interplay between cell expansion, mechanical tension, and the underlying distribution of hormones like auxin, each interacting according to gradients and fields described elegantly by differential equations. Even its silence is a solution. Stillness arises when opposing forces, wind resistance, stem stiffness, vein rigidity, gravitational torque, settle into a gentle balance. This balance is a calculation performed endlessly by nature without conscious thought. Let's drift deeper now. Close your eyes if you'd like. Imagine a forest. The air is cool but not cold. A soft breeze passes by, brushing the leaves above you, creating the faintest murmur. One leaf, however, rests almost motionless. It barely moves. In that quiet shape lies the mathematics of survival. Inside the leaf, diffusion equations guide the movement of carbon dioxide molecules from the air outside into tiny pockets called stomata. These molecules wander inside by Brownian motion, a random walk described by probability distributions that mathematicians model through partial differential equations. And yet the leaf's internal structure, its spacing, its cell walls, its loosely arranged mesophyll, are all optimized to increase the likelihood that each wandering molecule eventually finds an enzyme called Ru-bis-Co, waiting patiently to begin the chemistry of photosynthesis. What is remarkable is that all of this is silent. The leaf performs these calculations wordlessly, softly, gently. It never rushes, it never demands attention. It simply endures, following mathematical laws that were written into the universe long before the leaf ever grew. There is something deeply calming in that thought, that life in all its complexity can arise from simple rules applied patiently over time. The leaf's silence is, in a way, a form of surrender. It does not fight the logic of the world. It follows it, trusts it, and by doing so becomes something functional and beautiful. Consider its curvature. Leaves often bend in subtle arcs, shaped by gradients of growth that differ across their surfaces. This bending can be described using the mathematics of Gaussian curvature, a concept that connects geometry with the physical world. Regions that grow faster than others cause the leaf to curl or ripple. When we look at a gently wavy leaf edge, we are witnessing the solution to a geometric constraint. The leaf cannot stay flat if one part grows faster than another. It must bend, fold, or ripple. These ripples echo patterns found in torn plastic, in the edges of seashells, in the shapes of flower petals, patterns that emerge from the deep connection between growth and geometry. Tonight, as we continue to explore this quiet universe inside a leaf, allow yourself to settle into the same calm state of equilibrium. Just as the leaf finds its balance in silence, let your thoughts drift towards stillness. Let your breath mirror the softness of its movement. Let the slow rhythm of this story carry you like a gentle current. Because in every leaf, there is a calm universe of logic, and in its silence, there is a lesson that even the smallest things can be governed by vast principles, that quietness itself can be a kind of mathematics. We will explore more of these principles, but for now, simply rest in the thought that a leaf's stillness is not empty, it is full of order, full of patterns, full of quiet truths, and we will drift deeper into them together. If part one was a gentle opening, a quiet doorway into the still, green world of a leaf, then part two becomes a deeper step inward. As you settle into your breath, perhaps a little slower than before, imagine yourself moving closer to the leaf's interior landscape, close enough to sense the faint architecture behind its silent pose, close enough to notice that every detail, no matter how small, feels purposeful, delicately balanced, almost mathematical in its certainty. Tonight, we move from the broad view of shape and balance into the subtler geometry within, into the branching networks, the internal symmetries, and the invisible fields of energy that guide the life of a leaf. And we will move slowly, always slowly, because the inner world of a leaf is soft, and the mathematics that shapes it unfolds in quiet steps, not hurried ones. Let yourself imagine holding a leaf, not plucked, but gently cupped by the idea of it. You are not disturbing anything. You are only observing the way morning dew observes the world, present but weightless. And in this imagined leaf, you begin to notice the veins, not as lines, but as pathways, roads built by nature to carry life from one cell to another. Veins are more than channels. They are solutions. They form patterns that appear instinctively beautiful to us, perhaps because they echo patterns we see everywhere. The branching of rivers into smaller streams, the branching of arteries into capillaries, the electrical wiring of neurons inside the brain, even the distribution of city streets radiating from central roots. In mathematics, such structures are described by fractal geometry, forms that repeat themselves across scales, capturing complexity through simple rules. If you look closely enough, even just in your imagination, you will see how the thickness of the largest vein at the center gradually reduces as the network branches outward. This tapering is not arbitrary. It follows a natural optimization principle, one that reduces resistance to flow while minimizing the energy required to build and maintain the network. This idea is captured by Murray's law, which describes how optimal branching occurs when the cube of the parent vessel's radius equals the sum of the cubes of its daughter branches. But a leaf does not know mathematics. Instead, it embodies it. Evolution shapes leaves in ways that echo solutions to physical constraints. Over millions of years, only veins that followed near-optimal branching persisted. Everything else, every inefficient pattern, faded away like forgotten drafts. Now imagine traveling deeper, past the visible veins, into the invisible mathematics beneath them. Picture the leaf when it was young, only a bud. Inside that tiny bud, the earliest veins formed according to gradients of a molecule called auxin. Auxin flows through the developing tissue like a river seeking the lowest point. It moves, accumulates, and pulls new pathways behind it, just as water carves channels in soil. Mathematically, auxin movement resembles a diffusion process guided by feedback loops. Where auxin collects, new veins emerge. Where it flows freely, existing veins strengthen. This interplay between concentration and structure is described by the canalization model, a mathematical concept that explains how tissues form channels through self-reinforcing flows. The more auxin flows through a region, the more that region becomes a preferred pathway for future flow, eventually solidifying into the network of veins that shapes the adult leaf. Pause for a moment and let that image settle. A leaf, silent, unmoving, is the result of countless self-organizing processes. Processes where molecules wander by probability, where structures appear from chemical gradients, and where geometry is sculpted not by conscious design, but by quiet inevitability. Imagine zooming closer still, toward a single cell. The leaf's interior becomes a mosaic of tiny rooms, each one filled with chloroplasts, each chloroplast containing within it stacks of green membranes shaped like delicate spirals of energy. Inside these spirals, photons of sunlight collide with electrons, creating currents of life, and yet everything remains silent. In the mathematics of diffusion, silence is smoothness, a state where gradients are gentle and differences between one region and another are small. When light enters the leaf, it scatters, diffuses, and eventually spreads evenly across its inner chambers. This creates a kind of optical equilibrium, a balanced distribution of energy that allows photosynthesis to proceed efficiently without harsh fluctuations. If you were to model this using mathematics, you might use partial differential equations that describe how light behaves in turbid media, materials that scatter and diffuse light, like fog, water, or the interior of a leaf. These equations ensure that light does not simply pass through. It lingers, slows, and fills space with a gentle, glowing uniformity. This soft distribution of light is one reason why the leaf's silence feels so complete. Inside, there are no sharp boundaries, only gradients. No abrupt changes, only transitions. Even the leaf's edges whisper mathematics. The tiny serrations, the wavy margins, the curled tips all emerge from instabilities during growth. When cells at the boundary grow slightly faster than those behind them, the edge begins to ruffle. These ruffles resemble solutions to equations of elastic instability, similar to the wavy patterns of a ribbon pulled tight or the ripples that appear on a strip of cloth when one side is stretched unevenly. Mathematics describes this phenomenon through differential growth, where the geometry of a surface responds to non-uniform expansion. And while the leaf does not consciously shape its edge, these patterns reveal the underlying balance of forces acting upon it during development. In the forest, when a breeze travels through the air, each leaf responds with its own frequency. Some flutter quickly, others lazily, depending on their mass, stiffness, and shape. These motions are solutions to differential equations of oscillation. The stillness of a leaf, too, is a solution, one reached when forces cancel out, leaving a point of equilibrium. Think of that for a moment. Every leaf in the forest, every leaf on the planet, is quietly solving equations all the time, finding the shape that best resists tearing, choosing the stiffness that reduces damage from wind, arranging veins in patterns that minimize energy costs. It is not aware of these equations. It doesn't need to be. Nature performs mathematics effortlessly, letting patterns emerge from the simplest interactions repeated countless times. As you continue to breathe softly, perhaps feeling your body settling deeper into relaxation, imagine looking upward into a forest canopy. Billions of leaves, each a separate piece of living mathematics, yet all moving together like a coordinated array. When wind passes through, waves travel across the canopy, a form of collective oscillation described beautifully by the mathematics of coupled systems. Each leaf influences its neighbors ever so slightly. Each vibration spreads outward, merging with others, creating a shimmering pattern across the treetops that resembles ripples moving across a pond. In this way, a forest becomes more than trees. It becomes a fluid surface, a dynamic tapestry, a living graph of the wind's invisible journey. And beneath every flutter, every shimmer, every soft movement, there remains the deep, abiding silence of a leaf at rest, a silence built from balance, a silence carved by geometry, a silence shaped by equations older than language, older than civilization, older even than the first forests that ever covered the earth. As we end this part, imagine holding onto that stillness. Let it settle into you the way sunlight settles into a leaf, slowly, gently, without urgency. Let it remind you that mathematics exists not only in numbers or symbols, but in the quiet persistence of natural things, waiting patiently to be noticed. We will continue this gentle journey soon, drifting deeper into the unseen physics, histories, and quiet complexities of a leaf, and the silence that holds it. As we drift together into part 3, imagine the night becoming even quieter than before. The air around you feels soft, almost velvety, and the world seems to slow down until only the gentle rhythm of your body remains. In that stillness, the leaf waits, not demanding attention, not asking to be noticed, simply existing in a state of perfect, mathematical calm. In this part, we will wander deeper into the physics of silence, into the hidden tensions and internal mechanics that allow a leaf to keep its shape, endure its stresses, and remain quietly balanced through storms, sunlight, and time. And we will move gently, as though walking barefoot through a soft forest path, touching each idea with care. Take a slow breath in and out. Now we step inside the leaf structure. If we could shrink ourselves down, much smaller than a grain of pollen, and walk across the surface of a leaf, the landscape would appear unfamiliar. What looks smooth from afar becomes textured, filled with microscopic ridges and valleys. This unevenness is not a flaw. It is a careful design, shaped by physics and geometry. The outermost layer of the leaf, the cuticle, is a waxy surface composed of molecules arranged in repeating patterns. These molecules create a form of natural self-assembly, aligning into structures that repel water. When raindrops land on a leaf, they bead up into perfect hemispheres, maintaining a spherical shape that minimizes surface energy according to the mathematical principles of fluid tension. This is why droplets roll off leaves so effortlessly. The surface is designed, through millions of years of evolution, to encourage water to slip away, carrying dust, dirt, and spores with it. This phenomenon is called the lotus effect, named after the remarkable self-cleaning leaves of the lotus plant. The mathematics behind it is rooted in surface free energy and contact angles, where the shape of a droplet is determined by the balance of cohesive forces within the water and adhesive forces between the water and the leaf. A leaf's silence includes these droplets rolling gently, never lingering long enough to disturb the delicate tissues beneath. Even the rain obeys the leaf's quiet mathematics. Now imagine stepping down past the cuticle into the layers beneath. The cells of the leaf's surface, the epidermis, are shaped like interlocking puzzle pieces. Their geometry is a natural solution to a packing problem, one that mathematicians have studied for centuries: how to tile a surface efficiently while allowing for flexibility and mechanical strength. The jigsaw-like shapes of these cells allow them to resist tearing, distributing mechanical forces across an intricate network rather than along straight lines. When wind passes through the forest, bending leaves or pulling them in unpredictable directions, this tessellated armor protects them. Each cell shares the load, spreading the stress across a larger area, as though the leaf were whispering to the wind, "I will bend, but I will not break." And there is more. Beneath the epidermis lies the mesophyll, the soft inner tissue where photosynthesis takes place. Here, the geometry shifts from puzzles to chambers, large, irregular spaces that allow gases to diffuse freely. The leaf needs these spaces in order to breathe. Oxygen must escape, carbon dioxide must enter, and water vapor must pass outward. From a mathematical perspective, these internal cavities maximize diffusion efficiency. They increase surface area dramatically without adding much mass. Nature discovered this long before humans designed porous materials, foams, and aerogels with similar structures. In many ways, the mesophyll resembles a living sponge made of light and air, where sunlight is captured not in harsh beams but in gentle scatterings. The leaf's internal structure transforms harsh photons into soft illumination, filling the tissue with a diffuse glow that enhances photosynthesis. Light ceases to be directional, it becomes ambient, calm, even. This soft distribution is the mathematics of equilibrium at work, yet again. Now let us drift deeper still into the mechanical world of the leaf. Any object held by a stem will experience torque due to gravity. A leaf is no different. It bends slightly at its petiole, the small stalk that attaches it to the branch. This bending, so small we might never notice it, is the result of a delicate balance between the moment created by the leaf's weight and the stiffness of the petiole. In mechanics, this can be modeled using beam theory, where the shape of a bending structure is described by differential equations. The petiole, acting like a tiny cantilever beam, distributes forces so that the leaf stays oriented toward light. Even the angle at which a leaf tilts is optimized. Too steep, and the leaf risks losing too much water. Too flat, and light might strike too harshly during the hottest hours. But the leaf does not calculate consciously. Its tissues grow in response to environmental cues, adjusting thickness and stiffness in ways described by mechanical feedback models. If too much bending occurs, cells on one side grow denser, thickening the tissue. If the leaf stays too rigid, opposing forces soften the tissue by adjusting cell wall composition. Over time, the leaf drifts toward a stable equilibrium, a mechanical homeostasis. Silence in nature often arises from balance, and balance arises from mathematics. Now imagine the leaf not in stillness, but in motion. A gust of wind passes through the forest. Leaves flutter, twist, turn, then fall back into place. This movement resembles a classical physical system, harmonic oscillation. Each leaf has its own natural frequency determined by mass, shape, and stiffness. In strong wind, leaves sometimes reconfigure themselves to reduce drag, a phenomenon called reconfiguration, where flexible structures reorient to minimize stress. Mathematically, this is a dynamic system adjusting toward lower energy states. Leaves twist into streamlined shapes, reducing flutter. They behave like soft, living airfalls. The silence that follows a storm, the stillness afterward, is the leaf returning to equilibrium. Even the arrangement of leaves on a branch follows mathematical principles. Many plants display phyllotaxis, spiral leaf arrangements governed by the Fibonacci sequence. This pattern minimizes self-shading, ensuring that each leaf receives sufficient light. If you trace the angle between consecutive leaves, you will often find the golden angle, approximately 137.5 degrees. This angle distributes leaves in a way that avoids overlap, creating a natural spiral that repeats across sunflowers, pine cones, succulents, and more. The mathematics behind this pattern is old, deep, and universal. It emerges from simple rules: grow, turn, grow, turn. But over time, this repetition shapes spirals that cover the natural world, the same spirals we see in galaxies, hurricanes, and seashells. The leaf is a small part of that universal geometry, quietly continuing a pattern that seems older than Earth itself. Take a moment to breathe again. Let these images settle around you like soft moss, a leaf that bends without breaking, a surface that cleans itself with water beads, a network of veins optimized like rivers, a spiral arrangement echoing ancient ratios. And all of this silent. So silent It might go unnoticed unless we take the time to listen carefully. This silence is not emptiness, it is order, it is balance, it is the gentle hum of mathematics playing out in living form. In the next part, we will go even deeper into the chemistry of light, the physics of pigment, and the strange, beautiful equations that allow a leaf to turn sunlight into life. But for now, let the quiet remain with you. As we drift into part 4, imagine the world around you quieting down even further. The night grows deeper, sounds soften, time seems to slow. In this soft darkness, the leaf we've been exploring begins to glow, faintly, gently, not with actual light, but with the quiet radiance of understanding. As if the more we learn about it, the more luminous it becomes in our imagination. And so we continue, calmly, delicately, descending into the inner chambers of the leaf, where chemistry becomes geometry, where light becomes energy, and where silence becomes a kind of living equation. Take a slow breath, allow it to settle, and now let us step softly into the realm of light. Inside every leaf, the central miracle unfolds. Photosynthesis, the remarkable process that transforms photons into sugars, turning sunlight into something the plant can store, move, and use. To understand the mathematics of a leaf's silence, we must examine how this process works, not quickly or efficiently, but gently, in a way shaped by probabilities, absorption curves, and the quiet choreography of photons. Imagine a single beam of sunlight traveling millions of kilometers from the surface of the sun, crossing empty space for 8 silent minutes, until it finally touches a leaf. When that photon lands, it encounters a pigment molecule, usually chlorophyll or. These pigments absorb light in distinct wavelengths, primarily in the red and blue regions of the spectrum. The mathematics of this absorption can be described by the Beer-Lambert law, which relates how light diminishes as it passes through material. Inside the leaf, this law becomes a story of gradients and gentle fading. Light penetrates the tissue and then weakens, not suddenly but gradually. Each layer absorbs a little more, allowing the deepest parts of the leaf to receive softened, diffused illumination, like sunlight filtering through morning fog. This gentle decline in intensity ensures that photosynthesis can happen throughout the tissue without overwhelming the delicate machinery within the cells. Silence, once again, is the absence of extremes. Now picture the chloroplasts themselves, tiny green organelles drifting inside each mesophyll cell like boats in a still lagoon. Each chloroplast contains thylakoid membranes arranged in stacks called grana. Under microscope, they resemble spiraling, layered steps. Within these layers, two main photosystems, PSII and Psi, work together in a sequence so balanced, so precise, it feels almost musical. In mathematical terms, their cooperation is a series of coupled reactions, where the output of one process becomes the input for the next. But these reactions do not occur with mechanical certainty. They occur through probability. Electrons jump, photons strike, molecules vibrate, all according to the rules of quantum mechanics. The quiet shimmering of these reactions can be expressed through quantum yield, a quantity that measures how efficiently absorbed light is converted into chemical energy. Leaves do not always maximize this yield, they balance it. Too much energy creates reactive oxygen species, which can damage cells. Too little energy, and the leaf cannot grow. And so the leaf solves an optimization problem every moment it is alive, absorbing just enough light, dissipating just enough excess, remaining poised between efficiency and safety. This balance is maintained by non-photochemical quenching, a process through which the leaf safely releases surplus energy as heat. On the surface, the leaf looks passive. Inside, it is constantly regulating, adjusting, and protecting itself through mathematical thresholds and biochemical feedback loops. Now imagine the pigments themselves more closely. Chlorophyll is a chlorine ring with a magnesium atom at its center, an arrangement that is mathematically elegant. Its structure allows electrons to move in delocalized paths, creating an energy landscape where absorption occurs at precise wavelengths. This precision is what gives leaves their characteristic green. Green, the color we associate with calm, is actually the color the leaf chooses to reject. the wavelength left over after the pigments have absorbed what they need. The mathematics behind this reflection is described by absorption spectra, peaks and valleys that show exactly how pigments interact with light. These curves, plotted across the visible spectrum, reveal the quiet selectivity of the leaf. It does not greedily absorb everything. It takes only what is useful. There is a lesson in that silence. Now let your thoughts drift deeper into the leaf, past the pigments, and into the electron transport chain. Here, electrons move step by step through proteins embedded in the thylakoid membrane. Each step is controlled by energy gradients, not unlike a ball rolling down a gentle slope. Protons accumulate on one side of the membrane, creating a chemical potential, a kind of stored tension that is harnessed by ATP synthase. ATP synthase is one of the most extraordinary molecular machines in biology. It rotates like a turbine, driven by the flow of protons through its central channel. This rotary motion produces ATP, the universal energy currency of life. If you zoom in enough, far smaller than any microscope could manage, you would see the faint suggestion of symmetry in this molecular machine. Its components are arranged in repeating patterns, shaped by the mathematics of energy minimization and geometric stability. Even at the atomic level, nature tends toward forms that balance tension and release, energy and structure. Breathe for a moment. Let the enormity of that microscopic stillness settle around you. Even the quiet turning of a molecular turbine contributes to the calm persistence of a leaf's existence. Now imagine the leaf not in sunlight but in darkness. When night comes, the leaf does not sleep. It shifts into a different mode, using stored sugars to repair its tissues, strengthen its bonds, and prepare for the next day. During this time, another kind of silent mathematics takes over: equations of metabolism, the slow optimization of carbon allocation, and the careful release of stored energy. The leaf uses part of what it harvested during the day to maintain itself at night. The balance is delicate. Too much consumption, and the leaf will starve before dawn. Too much storage, and the sugars could crystallize or cause osmotic stress. To solve this problem, plants employ circadian rhythms, internal clocks regulated by feedback loops of gene expression. The equations of these loops resemble those used to describe oscillators, systems that repeat in cycles, always returning to a baseline. These rhythms allow the leaf to anticipate dawn, to open its stomata at the right time, to prepare its photosystems before the sun appears. Mathematics becomes memory. Memory becomes survival. Survival becomes silence. And so the leaf continues through its life, absorbing light, releasing oxygen, creating sugars, adjusting its angle, repairing its structures, sensing the world around it, always following the gentle, unspoken logic of its own internal equations. In the next part, we will move into the ecology of silence, how leaves interact with the forest around them, how they communicate without sound, and how entire ecosystems arise from countless small decisions made by individual leaves. For now, let the quiet linger. Let the green, silent geometry of the leaf surround your thoughts. Let it remind you that life often unfolds most beautifully when it unfolds quietly. The night settles a little deeper now, as if the world itself is leaning closer to listen. We continue our long, drifting journey into the quiet symmetries that guide the life of a leaf. By now, the leaf is no longer just an object of nature. It has become a companion, an ancient mathematician whispering truths through forms, curves, and silences. And as we ease into part 5, we return to that silence, not as emptiness, but as structure. As a subtle architecture shaping the way the leaf grows, breathes, and remembers the sunlight that made it. Tonight, we follow the mathematics hidden in the inner world of the leaf. If earlier parts explored the visible patterns, the shapes, the ratios, the branching, this part turns inward, toward the microscopic geometries that unfold beneath the surface. We drift now into the cellular wilderness, a landscape where silence becomes structure and structure becomes life. The geometry inside a leaf. When you hold a leaf between your fingers, you are holding a partitioned universe. The surface may appear soft, uniform, and almost featureless from afar, but when magnified, the leaf becomes a mosaic, an intricate tessellation of cells weaving together like luminous tiles. Imagine lowering yourself gently into that hidden world. Everything becomes larger, brighter, and more defined. The cells sit in a tight, interlocking pattern, most of them shaped like small, swollen polygons. They rarely form perfect geometric shapes. Instead, they create what mathematicians call Voronoi-like patterns, shapes created when space is divided organically, each region asserting just enough of itself to survive, while still submitting to the quiet harmony of the whole. There is silence here, but not a dead silence. It is the silence of order, the silence of balance. Each cell expands only until it gently bumps against its neighbors, not forcefully, not competitively, just enough to mark its boundary in the softest possible way. In mathematics, this is known as minimizing energy, the tendency for natural systems to settle into forms that require the least effort, the least strain, the least tension. And so, the pattern inside a leaf is a quiet agreement among thousands of living compartments, each finding its place in a shared geometry. Packing problems and nature's soft logic. Mathematicians have long contemplated how shapes can be packed together efficiently, how circles fit into squares, how spheres fill volumes, how polygons tile a plane. These packing problems are not only elegant puzzles, they lie at the heart of how tissues grow. Inside the leaf, cells behave like soft spheres pressed together. They deform, curve, and adjust themselves until they reach a stable configuration. Their shapes are rarely identical, yet they follow two guiding principles. 1. They avoid gaps. A plant cannot afford wasted space. Every area must carry water, minerals, or light. 2. They avoid undue stress. Tension creates vulnerability, and nature prefers durability over perfection. Thus, the structure that emerges is neither symmetrical nor random. It exists in the space between order and chaos, a living compromise. Imagine the sound that would accompany such a process if it were audible. It would be soft, almost imperceptible, not a melody, not a rhythm, but the faint whisper of cells negotiating the geometry of life, a silent calculus. The mathematics of light capture. As we travel deeper, the silence begins to shimmer with purpose. The internal structure of the leaf is not just a geometric curiosity, it is optimized for the most delicate mathematical challenge the plant faces, capturing sunlight efficiently. Even the placement of cells follows a logic, a kind of radiant choreography meant to distribute light evenly throughout the tissue. The leaf solves a problem that mathematicians call optimal distribution. Too much sunlight in one area can damage cells through overheating or radiation stress. Too little sunlight elsewhere starves those regions of energy. The leaf, through millions of years of refinement, arranges its internal chambers like a cathedral of light. Chloroplasts, those tiny green organelles, move toward the sunlit wall when light is gentle and retreat deeper into the cell when light grows harsh. This movement follows a gradient, a smooth, continuous function like a wave that rises and falls depending on the intensity of light. In these shifting arrangements, we find the mathematics of adaptation. A leaf does not passively accept sunlight, it calculates how to receive it. It silences excess, it lifts shadows, it balances risk with reward. If the leaf had words, this would be its whispered formula. Take only what you can use, protect what you have, share the rest among your cells. Phyllotaxis within. Although phyllotaxis traditionally describes how leaves arrange themselves on a stem, the same principles echo internally in quieter ways. The spirals and ratios that shape branches and buds ripple subtly into the microscopic domains. The spiral thinking of nature does not stop at the surface. It is embedded in the growth directions of fibers, in the angles of vascular pathways, even in the way chloroplasts cluster within cells. These are not perfect spirals, far from it, but faint mathematical preferences, like a music theme that keeps returning, softer each time, woven into the arrangement of tissues. Inside the leaf, the Fibonacci sequence becomes less like a rigid structure and more like an ambient influence, something gentle, almost instinctive. One might imagine the leaf listening to that faint sequence, echoing its cadence as it grows, almost as if remembering a song played by the ancestors that came before it. Vascular networks and silent optimization. If we follow the veins deeper, the geometry tightens. The branching patterns inside a leaf obey principles familiar to mathematicians and engineers: minimization of energy, shortest path algorithms, and resistance reduction. Leaf veins do not wander aimlessly. They solve complex optimization problems in real time. A vein forms where it will carry water most efficiently. Smaller veins branch at angles that reduce transport distance. The network forms loops, an evolutionary genius move, so that if one path becomes blocked, another route can bypass the obstruction. To an untrained eye, the vein map looks incidental, but within it lies a system resembling urban transportation grids, electrical circuits, river deltas, neural pathways. The same mathematics echoes across realms, and the leaf quietly participates in this universal language. Branches split at predictable ratios. Veins are spaced at distances approximating optimized distribution functions. Even the tiny capillary-like endings that reach the edge of the leaf follow rules that mirror the Murray's law of branching, observed also in animal blood vessels. The leaf, without organs, without a brain, performs these optimizations silently, guided by gradients of hormones, pressures, and growth signals. It is a self-organizing system, solving equations simply by existing. Silence as a mathematical constraint. Throughout this internal journey, one theme keeps returning: silence is not emptiness. It is a boundary, a rule, a constraint shaping everything that grows inside the leaf. Nature often creates through constraints. The leaf's silence is one such constraint. Where there is silence, the plant does not waste resources. Where there is silence, symmetry emerges by necessity. Where there is silence, the leaf listens to the physics that guide its shape. In mathematics, constraints make solutions possible. They narrow infinite possibilities into a single stable answer. In that way, the stillness inside a leaf is not absence, it is guidance. The silence tells each cell when to stop growing, tells each vein when not to cross, tells each chloroplast when to retreat, tells the leaf when to fold, when to expand, when to rest. Silence is the invisible architect, and the leaf, through billions of microscopic decisions made without consciousness, becomes a testament to the elegance of constraint. Closing this part. In this gentle inward journey, we have seen how the leaf uses geometry, optimization, and structural logic to build its internal world. Yet the deeper we go, the more we realize these mathematical patterns are not inventions of the leaf. They are inherited from the fabric of nature itself, a quiet inheritance written long before any leaf existed. In Part 6, we will drift even deeper, exploring the physics of water flow inside leaves, the mathematics of diffusion and evaporation, and how silence governs the rhythms of hydration and drought within this fragile, silent organ. For now, rest in the awareness that inside every leaf lies a universe of shapes, guided by quiet, patient mathematics. The night continues to deepen around us, as if the world itself has allowed its breaths to slow and soften. In this stillness, we descend further into the quiet architecture of the leaf, not just its geometry or its light, not just the patterns impressed upon it by ancestry and evolution, but the subtle physics of movement flowing silently within. Part 6 is a journey into the mathematics of water, the quiet hydraulics of a living sheet of green, and the whispered equations that determine how a leaf drinks, cools, and survives. Settle in, let the rhythm of thought slow down once more. Let the leaf become a world we gently inhabit. The pulse without a heart. Inside a leaf, Water moves in pathways that resemble rivers, capillaries, and lakes, yet no heart pumps them forward. Instead, the leaf draws water upward through negative pressure, a process so delicate that mathematicians once doubted it could even occur. But plants, patient and ancient, solved the puzzle long ago. The movement begins below, deep in the soil, where roots absorb water and send it up through the xylem, tiny tubes with walls strong enough to resist collapse. Yet when the water reaches the leaf, something remarkable happens. Evaporation pulls more water upward, like a whisper tugging at a thread. This upward draw obeys the laws of cohesion tension theory, a balance between the cohesive attraction of water molecules and the tension created by evaporation. It may sound abstract, but inside the leaf, this is a gentle, continuous pulse, so quiet it is often called the plant's silent heartbeat. Imagine tiny water molecules holding hands. Imagine their grip so strong that when one is pulled upward, the rest follow. Imagine that this entire movement depends on stability, on silence, on the absence of air bubbles that might break the chain. This is mathematics expressed as a whisper. The physics of surface tension, the chemistry of hydrogen bonds, and the geometry of narrow conduits combining to lift water hundreds of times taller than a human. The equation of evaporation. Evaporation, though invisible, is not random. It follows equations describing diffusion, boundary layers, and the movement of molecules within air. Inside the leaf, evaporation acts like a mathematician disguised as wind, quietly determining how quickly water leaves the pores and how much must be drawn up to replace it. This process follows fixed laws of diffusion, which describe how substances move from areas of high concentration to low concentration. But instead of gases drifting freely, the leaf adds complexity. The pores open and close. Humidity shifts with time. Heat alters the rate of evaporation. Light changes the behavior of guard cells. These dynamic variables transform the leaf into a constantly adjusting system, one that performs real-time optimization without equations scribbled across chalkboards. Every pore, called a stoma, acts as a mathematical gateway, balancing water loss with carbon dioxide intake. Too open and the leaf desiccates. Too closed and photosynthesis falters. So the leaf listens to sunlight, humidity, and internal pressure, adjusting just enough. The solution is never perfect, never fixed. It is living mathematics, a moving equilibrium, like a dancer subtly shifting their balance to remain upright. Stomatal geometry and microvalves of life. Stomata are portals, two guard cells curling or straightening to adjust the opening between them. Seen under magnification, they resemble lips, tiny valves capable of extraordinary precision. Their geometry is not arbitrary. Their behavior is not random. Each stoma is shaped to respond quickly to water pressure, bending in ways that follow mechanical laws. When water fills the guard cells, they bow outward. When it leaves, they relax inward. The relationship between pressure and curvature follows predictable mechanical equations, nonlinear yet consistent. Inside each guard cell, cellulose fibers are arranged like tiny hoops, restricting expansion in some directions and allowing it in others. The pattern of these fibers is a blueprint, a subtle, silent algorithm that governs the opening angle of the pore. And so, the leaf becomes a landscape of microvalves, each one participating in a giant optimization problem across the entire surface. The combined behavior of thousands of stomata creates a smooth regulation of gas exchange, balancing the chemical needs of the leaf with the physical limits of its environment. It is a mathematics of coordination without a conductor, a dance of pores, a mosaic of decisions, a silent concert of openings and closings that keeps the plant alive. The diffusion highway inside the leaf. Once carbon dioxide enters the stoma, it must diffuse through layers of moist air and pass between cells before reaching the chloroplasts. This journey is governed by paths that resemble invisible corridors, and its efficiency depends on the spatial arrangement of cells. Here again, silence acts as a constraint. To maximize diffusion, the leaf must maintain small distances between airspaces and chloroplast-rich cells. At the same time, the tissue must remain mechanically strong. These competing requirements produce a structure resembling foam, an interlocking system of spaces that minimize the distance gases must travel. This is minimal surface geometry, the same mathematics that shapes soap bubbles, honeycomb, and the skeletons of marine microorganisms. The leaf is not consciously optimizing. It simply grows in a manner that reduces resistance. In this quiet efficiency, the leaf breathes deeply, slow, steady, continuous. As gases move, there is no sound, no vibration. Only diffusion, a movement guided by gradients so subtle they are measured in billionths of atmospheric pressure. The cooling mathematics of transpiration. When water evaporates from the leaf's surface, it cools the plant just as sweat cools the body. This cooling effect follows the physics of latent heat, the energy required for a liquid to become vapor. A leaf doesn't feel heat the way animals do, but it experiences thermal stress. Without cooling, its proteins would misfold, its membranes destabilize, and its photosynthesis falter. Yet the leaf cools itself using an elegant law. The more it warms, the faster water evaporates. The faster water evaporates, the more it cools. But excessive evaporation threatens hydration. Thus, the leaf performs a balancing act between heat and water, a negative feedback loop that engineers often study when designing climate systems. To the plant, this is not a calculation made with symbols. It is carried out through hormones, osmotic pressures, and microscopic responses that unfold with quiet precision. The leaf becomes a self-regulating system, cooling itself through the mathematics of phase change, adjusting itself through the geometry of pause, preserving itself through the silence of its own limits. Hydraulic failure and the mathematics of drought. In drought, the equations tighten, the margins shrink. The leaf must operate under constraints that grow sharper and more unforgiving. Water tension increases. Xylem pressure becomes dangerously negative. The risk of cavitation, air bubbles forming, rises sharply. Once an air bubble forms, it breaks the chain of cohesion, the same way a snapped thread breaks the pulling force on a bead necklace. Cavitation follows principles of fluid mechanics, and its likelihood can be predicted using equations similar to those describing fractures in materials. The leaf resists cavitation through narrow tubes, strong xylem walls, pressure gradients, elastic tissues. This is silent resilience, a quiet persistence embedded deep in its hydraulics. Even in stress, the mathematics continues, stillness getting structure, structure getting survival. Closing this part, we end part 6 standing among silent rivers. Water flows without sound, gases drift without echo. The pressure changes and tensions rise, yet no vibration betrays the internal movements. It is a quiet world governed not by randomness, but by equations so soft and continuous they resemble breath. In part 7, we will explore the mathematics of color, pigments, and light absorption, including the spectral logic of chlorophyll, the physics of green, and the silent interplay of wavelengths that paints every leaf with its familiar calm. For now, rest in the coolness of the leaf's inner currents, where motion and silence weave a delicate, enduring harmony. As we ease into part 7, the night itself seems to soften further, as though dimming its colors, settling into deeper blues, quieter shadows, and gentler breaths. In this softened world, we turn our attention to the mathematics of color, how a leaf, through pigments and structure, creates the familiar but mysterious green that calms us so effortlessly. Tonight, we explore the spectral logic behind chlorophyll, the geometry of pigment molecules, the physics of light absorption, and the silent symphony of wavelengths that paints a leaf with its soothing hue. Color, though experienced through emotion and perception, begins with intricate equations, relationships between energy and matter that unfold in silence across the surface of every leaf. Settle in, let the colors of the night guide you gently forward. The spectrum as a silent equation. When light falls on a leaf, it brings with it a spectrum, an unbroken gradient of wavelengths ranging from deep violet to long red. This spectrum is not random. It is a mathematical distribution. Shorter wavelengths carry higher energy, longer wavelengths carry less, and each one interacts differently with matter. A leaf, in essence, solves this spectrum. Not with thought, not with intention, but with structure. Not with numbers, but with symmetry. Not with sound, but with silence. Its pigments decide which wavelengths to absorb, which to reflect, which to transmit, and which to transform. And through this selective filtering, the leaf becomes green, not because green is chosen, but because green is left behind. This is one of the great subtleties of nature. Color often emerges from absence, not presence. The mathematics behind this lies in quantum mechanics, the governing rules that determine the energy levels in pigment molecules. The leaf's pigments absorb photons whose energies match the gaps between electron states. It is like a key fitting into a lock. Only certain wavelengths have the right energy to be absorbed. Those absorbed wavelengths disappear from the visible spectrum. The remaining ones, primarily green and yellow, bounce back to our eyes. Thus the leaf glows with the color of what it does not use. Chlorophyll, the silent gatekeeper of light. At the heart of this filtering process is chlorophyll, the molecule responsible for capturing sunlight and converting it into chemical energy. But chlorophyll is more than a pigment. It is a geometric marvel, a molecular ring structured with such elegance that it interacts with light in nearly ideal ways. Chlorophyll molecules contain a porphyrin ring, a large circle of atoms arranged with near-perfect symmetry. At the center sits a single magnesium ion, acting like the nucleus of a miniature solar system, coordinating the surrounding atoms. This ring has special energy levels, zones where electrons can rest or become excited. The specific spacing between these levels determines the wavelengths chlorophyll absorbs most strongly. Red light, 660 nm. Blue light, 430 nm. These are the wavelengths that energize photosynthesis most efficiently. The leaf drinks these colors deeply and holds them within its structure. Green light, however, is not absorbed efficiently. Its wavelength does not fit smoothly into chlorophyll's energy gaps, and so it bounces back, scattering through the leaf's interior like soft echoes. The result is the calming green we see, a gentle residue of the leaf's selective mathematics. The physics of reflection and scattering. A leaf is not a flat surface. It is a textured, multi-layered structure filled with translucent cells, interwoven fibers, air pockets, and microscopic irregularities. When light enters this structure, it undergoes reflection, refraction, scattering, partial absorption, re-emission. Because of this complexity, green light does not simply bounce off the surface. Instead, it is diffused, softened, and scattered in many directions. This scattering follows principles described by radiative transfer equations, laws that govern how light moves through participating media such as fog, clouds, or biological tissues. Inside the leaf, scattering produces the gentle, muted green that we associate with relaxation. Harsh reflections are minimized. Shadows are blurred. The leaf becomes a natural diffuser, turning sunlight into something warm and soothing. If leaves were glossy like metal, forests would shimmer with mirror-like reflections. Instead, they breathe light softly. Instead, they glow with something quieter. Nature chose diffusion over brilliance, subtlety over glare. Pigment harmonies, chlorophylls, carotenoids, and anthocyanins. Though chlorophyll dominates the visible signature of a leaf, it is never alone. Other pigments work alongside it, creating layers of spectral logic. Carotenoids, for example, absorb blue and blue-green wavelengths, contributing warm yellows and oranges. Their absorption spectra overlap with chlorophyll just enough to broaden the usable range of light. Their role is twofold. 1. Expanding the leaf's light capture. 2. Protecting the leaf from excess energy, acting as silent guardians that dissipate harmful light as heat. Anthocyanins, meanwhile, absorb green wavelengths, producing reds and purples in young leaves or leaves under stress. Their role is less about energy capture and more about shielding, like soft umbrellas raised against intense sunlight. These pigments together create a mathematical system of spectral partitioning. Each molecule claims certain wavelengths. Each molecule leaves others untouched. Each contributes to the final color we perceive. The leaf, in turn, becomes an emergent palette, a blend of absorption curves rather than discrete hues. Why green is so calming, a mathematical perspective. Humans evolved in landscapes dominated by leaves. The wavelengths reflected by foliage fall in the center of the visible spectrum, not too energetic, not too slow. The color green occupies a stable, balanced midpoint in wavelength and photon energy. If colors were musical notes, green would be a soft middle register, neither shrill nor bass-heavy. It is physiologically easy for the human eye to process, requiring less lens adjustment and less strain on the photoreceptors. Thus, the leaf's green is not just aesthetically calming. It is mathematically optimized for comfort. The world feels steady in the presence of green, and this steadiness is anchored in spectral physics and biological evolution. The hidden geometry of pigment arrangement. Pigments within a leaf are not scattered randomly. They are placed with geometric precision inside chloroplasts, arranged in stacks called grana, tied by membranes, and positioned near the cell edges where light is strongest. The arrangement of pigments follows. Optimal spacing for energy transfer. Minimized energy loss. Maximum exposure to incoming photons. This arrangement resembles a mathematical tiling problem, a way of arranging repeating units to maximize efficiency. It echoes patterns found in solar panels, where engineers mimic the leaf's internal geometry to improve energy capture. And yet the leaf accomplished this design long before human mathematics described it. Nature did not need equations. It needed only time and the silent pressure of energy flow. Color as a signal, color as a shield.